Welcome to the June 2021 edition of the EPA's Insight interview. This is your chance to get the inside track from one of our industry's leading executives. This month, I'm joined by someone I know you'll want to hear from. Based in sunny Jacksonville, Florida, but running a global business that has transacted payments for over 50 years, he's president of a technology company employing over 50,000 people. He has what may be called a big job, and it spans banking, merchant, and capital markets. He's also the former chairman of the board for the American Transaction Processors Coalition and remains active at Payments 20, an international community where our own chair of the advisory board, Marion King, is a board member. So please welcome to share a little bit about himself and his thoughts on the world of payments, the president of FIS, Bruce Lowthers.
Good morning, Tony, or good afternoon to you, I guess, and it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Very good, and thank you for being open to taking time to share your insights with the community, because I think our members will all know about FIS, but they won't necessarily know about you individually, because internally you're known for being dedicated to driving innovation, speed, and agility. Have taken on enabling change in the FIS's transformational change program. But what is perhaps less known is what continues to motivate someone who, as you've said to me before, has a fairly modest background, who has achieved so much in their career. So what is it that continues to drive and motivate you?
Yeah, I think in my later stage here of my career, I've had a lot of opportunity to kind of think about what is the motivation that drives me. And I think there's a couple things that I would say. One, I find this just to be terribly fun. I really enjoy being with my team. That part for me has been always something that I've shared, Tony, with my mother, and my mother will ask, is it still fun? Because I promised her years ago I'd only do it as long as I was having fun. And certainly days are maybe not as fun as other days, but overall it's been just a lot of fun for me to be engaged in this industry and watch the industry go through change. But the underlying tenet, I think, that really still motivates me is something that we talk a lot about, is how do we help people? When I look back over my career, I go back to the startups, the 4 startups that I participated in. The theme there was trying to solve a problem that helped our clients either deliver a solution for their clients or solve a particular operational challenge they were having. And that thought of helping is really what kind of has driven me throughout my career. And I think even today, we're facing a tidal wave of change in the next decade, and helping our clients, our employees, think through how we get through this next decade so that we have something that we can influence and really create a better opportunity for my son and his children ultimately when he has them years down the road. But that's really what we're doing, is we're really trying to create a better world for our kids and their kids. And that's what makes payments such an extraordinarily brilliant industry to be in. And you've been in it for many years. In fact, you've been for FIS for over 13 years and payments for longer. I mean, what has really changed in that time? I mean, I'm with you in that we've got a really phenomenal opportunity as an industry now, but has it always been that way? How has the industry changed in your time? Yeah, I think it's really a great question. As I think back to my early years, a lot of the payment stuff was really kind of in the back room, so to speak. It wasn't very visible. There's great associations now, like the one you lead, and others in other countries that are helping bring payments to the forefront. And that's been probably the big change. And what I find really intriguing about that is, while it was really kind of the technical people in the background, now as we've progressed to today, all of a sudden we find ourselves as the cool kids in the ecosystem. And that's pretty fun to be in, because I was never one of those kids. So So getting to hang around with people like you and the others in the payments industry has been pretty fun.
I love that. I've never been referred to as one of the cool kids either, but I'd rather fancy being one. That's really good. And so, but sometimes people refer to the good old days of back when payments were known for being in the sort of steady plumbers rather than progressive innovators. Is there anything you miss about those days?
No, not really. I think we have, certainly here at FIS, we've done a lot of technology advances over the last couple decades around payments. But what I really love is the pace of change and being able to really contribute to the way people execute their daily lives. And so for me, that's really fun, being able to see that dynamic change underway, being more ingrained into the kind of fabric of what people do on a daily basis, or small businesses do on a daily basis, is pretty awesome. And getting to see the benefits of that, getting to see someone executing a transaction in a new way, and then kind of seeing the smile on their face that it worked, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's sort of it's so much a part of our lives. It's never been noticed really, and we're kind of bringing it to the fore now, which I think is great. It's interesting because if I look back at my career in payments, I've been working with FIS on and off for over a decade or so, and I never forget I was invited by Gary Norcross to speak at some of your international conferences in Dubai and Vienna and Dubrovnik and Istanbul. Blimey, some great trips we had. Not anymore, sadly. We're stuck at home. But FIS tends to be seen as a US transaction processor with international interest, and that's my perception. That may not be the desire in those days, but certainly now, you've really moved beyond that. I think both in reputation and reality, and you've been much more active on the global stage. What is behind that strategy, and where do you see globally the most exciting hotspots for innovation and opportunity?
Yeah, Tony, what I would say is, as we look at our strategy, there's a lot of kind of motherhood and apple pie when you look at just the broad-based strategy, right? But what I would say is you can really synthesize that down into three distinct points for FIS. First, as we are going forward, we really want to become a world-class collaborator of solutions, bringing new solutions together. As I said, I think the pace of change accelerates so dramatically here as we go forward in the next decade that we've really got to take the technology that we have, partner with others to create unique solutions that help drive things forward. I think secondly, for us, we're really embracing technology that allows us to adapt at speed. And so what that really means for me is 5-6 years ago, we started kind of our modernization journey. We redid all of our data center infrastructure, moved 80% of our compute to the cloud. We changed our whole IP and networking systems and modernized all of those, reducing them from 19 million endpoints down to just a couple 100,000. We've really transformed the organization dramatically over the last few years. And we now need to really embrace that technology to accelerate and even drive further. But the third point, and probably the final of the three aspirations, is for us to truly establish ourselves as a global company. While today we do business in well over 100 countries, what we really are focusing on is the top 10 GDP countries and how do we really grow and scale in those marketplaces. And I think that's something that people have heard me talk about for the last couple of years. And for us, it's really bringing a focus to that. And so when you look at the acquisitions that we've had, whether it be the SunGard acquisition in the capital market space, which is really a global business, and then our WorldPay acquisition more recently, again, kind of a global business, we'll continue to do business in a lot of countries, but we're really planting our feet in a few countries that we think we can really scale, much like we've done in North America.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, that makes a whole heap of sense. They say be focused in business. That's the secret of success. And, I also think there's something about the interconnectiveness of the planet that perhaps didn't used to be this way. And you look at these major global international markets, and we are finding ourselves both in terms of knowledge and opportunity and people actually moving quite quickly between. Um,
And so when you talk about kind of hot markets, I think geographically, we probably look at the same hot markets that everybody else does, right? We obviously, the UK is critically important to us. When we look at India, Brazil, obviously the US. So, you hear almost everybody talk about these same markets. And so there's probably nothing new there as far as what countries we go to versus anyone else. I think for us, we see different opportunities within the verticals there. So for us, we see a lot of opportunity around RTP, really what the central banks are doing. I think probably everybody who will listen to this has probably read the Fed paper that came out yesterday in the US talking about how they're really getting after the central banks and digital currency with those central banks. And so we see there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of change that's going to evolve. And when there is change, there's great times to come in and be creative, kind of reimagine what we do and how we play in a space.
Yeah, keeping nimble and creative while you're also big and global must be quite a challenge. Certainly, the guys I work with seem to be aspiring to that. It's quite a challenge, though, isn't it?
It really is. I think for us, it's kind of funny. It's a cultural thing, and for us, it's people will ask, well, Bruce, you're running a $14 billion business. It's a very big business, but you're a startup guy. So how do you go from being a startup guy to running a large organization? And I joke all the time of, I don't really know how to do the large organization. So we just carried forward, let's just keep running it like a startup. And now it's just $1 billion startup. And so we really tried to incorporate that into our culture. And that's why you hear so much of the dialogue around driving new products and solutions to market, driving speed, getting faster. And I think, in our mind, we really view that we're in a great position to compete in the landscape because of the changes that we started making 5-6 years ago to position ourselves for where the market's going here over the next decade.
Do you know, Bruce, there's something about you referring to 5 or 6 years worth of change. Payments it happens very instantly when you actually pay for something, but the evolution of this industry is very long term. And you look at debit cards and coming out 50, 60 years ago, and you look at prepaid and contactless. These are innovations that are taking a long time to be adopted, and I'm sure that the new technologies you referred to there, CBDCs and stablecoins and others, will have a long tail. But there is something that I believe our industry hasn't really grappled with and sorted out yet. And it's to do with, I think we could almost say payments is failing in one respect, which it relates to an industry's ability to prevent payments-related financial crime, obviously, especially fraud and money laundering. It worries the EPA, it worries our advisory board. And to what extent do you agree with that? And what do you think we should do, if you do agree, to address the situation?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it's one of the things that as an industry, we've got to come together and figure out how to solve. I think as we look back, there's been too much of companies trying to solve the problem individually versus coming together and collaborating on how to solve the problem. The bad guys, if you will, using that descriptor, they're evolving too, right? Their technology is changing just as quickly as ours is, and some would probably argue faster. They're really taking bold steps forward. When you look back a decade ago and you look at the number of attacks that happen versus the number of attacks that happen today, it's exponentially higher today than it was before. So the game has really evolved. And for us to win as an industry, which we all need. We all need the industry to do well and create that secure, safe environment for people to execute transactions. We've got to come together and kind of drive that. And I think that's why associations like EPA are so important, is that they bring that discussion to the forefront and get leaders talking about how do we solve this challenge that we're facing.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying the role of our community in that respect, because I do believe that is one of the things that we're trying very hard to do, enable collaborations to address this particular issue. And there are other groups as well, and P20 is one that you've chaired in the past. Some of our community may not know about P20. It's a global organization. Can you tell us a little bit about it and what it's up to?
Yeah, so P20 came together a number of years ago, really with the thought, well, if I go back even further, really came back with a thought when I was participating with the World Economic Forum, and we were talking about how do we get kind of alignment across countries on some of these regulatory issues that are impacting the payments industry. And out of that came the thought of P20, and could we really bring together people from the UK and the US to start with, that were business leaders, senior business leaders, key politicians within both countries, and the key regulators from both countries, and create a dialogue around the things that were really impacting our industry. So regulation type of issues, whether it be financial crimes or AML, driving into those and trying to bridge a conversation between both countries and create some uniformity as to how we're attacking those. Financial inclusion is another one that's kind of near and dear to everybody's heart. And certainly, as we talk more and more about the central banks and digital currency, financial inclusion becomes even more elevated, right? You can't leave anybody behind out of the system. As an industry, we want everybody to participate and have that tide kind of rise all boats. And so it really became a forum for us to have these high-level discussions, which I think are great and helpful to our industry as a whole.
So certainly people say to me, what does collaboration look like? It's a great word. What does it look like? How would you know when you see collaboration? And the answer is people talking.
Yeah,
it's not much more people talking and then going away and doing stuff differently.
Well, we were very fortunate. I as we started going around and asking people, we had a lot of great people that stepped forward and said, yes, we think this would be a great forum to have the people in the room that could really drive change. When you have the senior business leaders, the senior regulators, and the senior government officials all in one room talking, and it was intentionally kind of kept as a smaller group, then it really allowed for things to start moving and, hopefully moving. And, hopefully I know that the team is still as passionate about it as when we started a few years ago. I think Duncan Sands and the teams are really trying to drive it forward, and hopefully they can continue to work with others and have some real outcomes.
Yeah, very good. It's about actually doing something that has an outcome. I do agree with you. But the penultimate question, by the way, I have a sense, Bruce, you and I could talk for hours, but sadly we have a limited time. The penultimate question is, FIS is a community patron of the EPA, and your European team, Jean-Paul Clothier, Jean-France, spoken with a French accent. I haven't said Jean-France with a French accent before. Martin Locke, Frédéric Chasson-Donis, and Sylvia Mendos. Puyi, of course. Where do you think we, that's the EPA as a payments community, should focus our efforts to support your team? And what should your team be doing to support the community?
Yeah, look, I think the association, in my mind, associations in general, EPA specifically, is really about driving those collaborative conversations around the non-competitive discussions, right? So how do we lift the industry as a whole? How do we make the industry better? And so, I'm delighted that our team is participating in that, and hopefully they're being vocal, being bold, and driving conversation. And I would encourage them to continue to do that as they move forward. But we need all of us contributing to make our industry better and for it to be successful. What the ultimate goal is, which is to make people's lives better and easier on a daily basis.
Brilliant, and that's very similar to the EPA's objectives, which is about improving lives everywhere through payments. Brilliant. So, and a final question, just on a personal basis,
Sure.
you have a son who today is just about to leave school. I think, is that correct? At the age of 18?
He's finishing his finals this morning, high school, and so he is going to be delighted, I would imagine, in about 2 more hours when that's behind him, and ready for his summer break, which he has a full slate of volunteering scheduled for the whole summer. So he's got a lot of work ahead of him, which I think will be great experiences helping out here in the Jacksonville community.
How wonderful to hear that. So if just imagine if he would turn to you in a few years' time and say, I'm thinking about following in your footsteps of a career in technology, banking, maybe even payments. What would your advice be?
I think it's, like all kids and all parents, I would imagine, you just want your kids to be happy and enjoy what they're doing in life. And if that's what he finds joy in, that's really what I'm looking for. He's probably said, unfortunately for him, he's probably scarred for life because he's sat through more of my conference calls than probably anybody else over the last year and had the opportunity to listen. And I'm sure he many times have thought to himself, boy, Dad's job's really not that exciting. But he is, like many kids, a technology kid. He likes coding and programming and those kind of things. So who knows where he goes, but like most dads, you just want him to be happy and have a healthy and happy life.
Yeah, wonderful. And what I'm just reflecting on this conversation. It's great to talk to someone who is so inspired by the fun and the joy of working in our amazing industry. You have an important celebration in a few days' time, don't you? Which is you and Leslie are celebrating your 26th anniversary.
That's right. That's right. It's been a long journey, and she's somehow miraculously stayed with me through all the startups and the craziness of startups. And it's just been a great journey. And hopefully next year we'll celebrate our anniversary over in England. And our goal is to get to Wimbledon. She's a big tennis fan. And so hopefully we'll get over there for that next year.
Brilliant. And when you do, we'll do what payments people love doing most, which is sitting around a table with a glass of something. In the case of the UK, a glass of warm beer, I'm afraid, but you'll be very, very welcome. And thank you very much, Bruce, for providing us with your insights and your thoughts and a little bit about you as well, and for your continued strong leadership of this wonderful industry of ours. Thank you very much, Bruce Lowthers from FIS.
Thank you, Tony.